Welcome to Untold, the business podcast bringing you the best kept secrets of Utah. Big business stories like Amazon, Apple, Uber, Tesla, they're everywhere. But the reality is, most people can't really relate to those. And small business is where the real economic action is. You might not know this, but about half of Utah employment is in small businesses. And Utah small business grew more than any other state in the US in the last 25 years. So Untold is bringing you the up close and personal stories of amazing Utah small businesses. With me today is Tom Bishop, CEO and founder of PaleBlue. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Looking forward to hearing about PaleBlue and about your story. Could you give us just a quick introduction of PaleBlue, what you guys do?
Yeah, so PaleBlue is a company based here in Park City, Utah that we founded in about late 2018. Did a Kickstarter in 2019 just to level set on the number of years we've been at it. Our goal in this business, in this time of life, is to take the world beyond single-use batteries. And so what we've done is kind of bring best-in-class chemistries and best-in-class user interfaces and things like that, and just a lot of innovation into the battery space. The world's been living on single-use batteries for many decades now, and we kind of saw an opportunity, but saw a real kind of opportunity to kind of apply our skills and efforts into making the world a little bit better by replacing the about 1 million tons per year of single-use batteries with something better.
1 million tons a year. Wow. Yeah, especially I'm getting out of this era now that we're empty nesters. But when I had little kids, we went through batteries like candy, man. and I remember for a long time we were trying different kinds of rechargeable batteries. I went back in our closet. This is a little bit embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have junk drawers. I have more than a junk drawer. I have like a few different piles of junk. And I went back through one of them and I found these things. These are collection of rechargeable batteries that we used in like video game controllers and stuff like that. These are in loop. So I gotta tell you, these weren't a great experience. Tell me about these, and what's the difference between these and what you're doing?
Yeah, so the longer story of the small form factor household batteries is after World War II, the government said all these manufacturers of industrial and military products were creating all sorts of different batteries in different sizes, and everything was custom and fragmented. And they standardized those, and so you ended up with the alkaline batteries, and there was actually a size B. There was A, B, C, D. Everyone's familiar with A. Now there's AA, AAA, and there's been a proliferation of sizes for different uses. Nickel metal hydride came out. It was invented in the 70s, but really didn't find prominence until probably the 90s. As a chemistry that could mimic the alkaline chemistry in a sense. The alkaline battery is generally 1.5 volts, and the voltage goes down, and so maybe nominally 1.5 volts, but decays as you use it. Nickel metal hydride was a rechargeable chemistry that allowed for recharging at home, but has a little bit different performance. So it's generally 1.2 volts. And so what you have in your hand and what every other rechargeable battery that's existed in the commercial space, there's some NiCad and other chemistries like carbon and things like that have come along, but nickel metal hydride is the one that you're holding and most people have experience with. And generally what you experience with those batteries is similar to what you did, which is a very lackluster experience. It's a low voltage, long charging time, and then the capacity seems to shrink as you use it. That's
Yeah.
a characteristic called memory. And so there's this combination of behaviors. If you don't fully discharge and fully charge, capacity shrinks. And because it's low voltage, you get the sense that it's almost dead. And so you recharge it, but it's not really almost dead. And so you just get in this cycle of recharging too early, shrink the capacity, doesn't last very long. You think it's dead, you do it again. And within, I don't want to say a few cycles, maybe you get 10 or 20, 50 cycles out of them if you're behaving nicely, or behaving properly, I guess, nicely to the battery. And so if the product requires you to behave perfectly in order to really deliver on its promise of being a rechargeable battery that you can use for a while,
Mm,
that's relying on the consumer to do everything right, and it requires too much effort. And the other thing, the other real big failure point I think for the old rechargeables was long charging times. When you need a battery,
mm,
you need it now or very soon, and so you really want a battery that is available with full power very quickly. And then the overnight charging times for nickel metal hydride. Here's a blast from the past. Let me cover the brand on this one. This is a recharger for nickel metal hydride
yeah,
batteries. Uh, you need an AC outlet, a long charging time, and that's just doesn't sync with the consumer need, which is, hey, I need a battery like now.
yeah,
Uh, and so you need batteries that can charge anywhere, anytime, very quickly. And that's one of the benefits of PaleBlue is they're USB-C, and so you can just charge them
yeah. The
wherever you
chargers.
need.
I was looking for the chargers, but I know where they are. They're in the garbage because
Yeah,
they also weren't very reliable. Like
yeah.
they kept going out, or it had four slots for four batteries, and two of them would work and two of them wouldn't. And
There's all
yeah,
these weird
it
rules.
was
You
a
can't do
hassle.
three. You have to have an even number. You can't if they're different charge states, and how are you going to know that? And they can't be different brands or different chemistries. And then people generally, unless you're really nerding out on batteries like us, then generally people don't get it. They don't behave perfectly. The battery doesn't last long, and they just ditch the whole category. That's why if you walk into any
Mm,
major retailer, you see like a wall of alkaline batteries. Maybe they give one spot to the rechargeables, which is a signal to consumers like, hey, we don't
right.
back these. They're not that good. You can buy them if you want to. So generally, for the last 20 years, people have just kind of abandoned that whole effort.
So you mentioned a couple of things that are important to consumers that weren't being met by old rechargeables. So tell me about how you and Pale Blue are approaching those points of value.
We came at this from the perspective of kind of innovators. I spent my career working in amazing companies that make cool products and innovate a lot, and just thinking about where technology is going and what consumers want at a benefits level. Like, what are the attributes and products that would benefit their life?
Mhm,
And the first question we came up on was, what's the best chemistry out there? It was right around the time, I think about a year after the guys who invented lithium ion won the Nobel Prize. In
mhm,
everything, your phone suddenly is lasting multiple years, and you don't have to charge it perfectly. You don't have to fully discharge and fully charge. And even the early iPhones, you had to really kind of baby them in order to get the most performance out of them. All of a sudden, like, EVs are coming. All your mobile electronics have all gone to lithium ion, and they're all just working. You just plug them in, and you don't
mhm.
have to think. And there's not a lot of concern about users doing it wrong. It's just plug it in by, at the time, micro USB, and it just works. And we just said, this is kind of amazing because everything else is going this way. Should we, uh, create a battery out of lithium ion that can be used easily anywhere? And it was like, the lithium is the obvious choice. Okay, so if you go to lithium, you end up with a series of questions from a product development standpoint of like, okay, what do you need to do to manage lithium properly so a consumer
Yeah.
can do it? And it comes down to a lot of high tech and very small electronics. We could call that the battery management system. And so every battery of ours, I'll show you real quick. This is my power bank, just charging our batteries on a power bank. You can see them charging there. So every battery
Every battery's
inside,
plugged in. Okay.
yeah, they're all plugged in. So every battery inside, there's some electronics. You can see the USB-C port here.
Yeah.
The top of this is electronics, and the rest of that is a lithium ion cell. And so that small powerful electronics piece is the unlock that allows um, us to use lithium ion, and that has a whole bunch of amazing features on it. But simply put, you can't use lithium ion to do your standard household sizes without electronics on board to enable regulation of the voltage, manage the charging and discharging, and a few other things we can go over later.
Okay.
But once you have electronics on board to manage the lithium ion, you're obviously going to do a USB-C port, or now at the time micro USB, but you're going to take the best in class charging solution. So concept, best in class lithium ion chemistry. What do we need to do? Oh, that enables best in class charging. It's like an obvious match made in heaven of best in class things that were, just out in the ether, ready to be taken advantage of. And it's really the confluence of the technology advancements that we didn't pay for, the microelectronics world paid for, and the mobile electronics space, and the lithium ion
Okay.
battery development for EVs, all of that kind of at an industrial commercial scale kind of paid for the billions of R&D to make those things happen. And we were just able to really kind of slide in and leverage available chemistries and available uh, chips and things like that we could build a BMS from. And so
So
we've
not
just
necessarily new technology, but new application,
yeah,
new form of the same thing.
yeah, technology is a tough word. It's definitely new technology in that it's an aggregation of so many other technologies. But yeah, the bits and pieces, we didn't invent the capacitors and resistors and the
Yeah.
IC that we're able to leverage and things. And the lithium ion we buy from BASF. It's a really high on lithium ion chemistry that was available on the market and reasonably priced thanks to all the investment in commercial scaling of these other industries. And so, yeah, it was really just fortuitous timing for us. Maybe we had the right insight at the right time to actually
Mm.
to do it.
So now you've got this idea, right? You've got the match of the onboard electronics and the best battery technology. Tell me how you got started. So what's the untold story,
Yeah,
right? Between that idea and where you are now 5 years later.
it's the garage story, but it wasn't the garage. It was my kitchen.
Oh,
I
wow.
My co-founder worked a lot with power banks in the early days, and one of his claims to fame was helping launch the Motorola Razr. Very good at small electronics and understood what it took to manage small electronics and small batteries. And he's um, you know, I spent a decade in Asia. He's been over there for 25 plus years now, maybe getting on 30. And so he and I talked about this, and he's like, I can get a sample made. We can just like put our hands on it and see what it looks like. And so he got me a sample and a pack of four, and I let my kids, charge them up, and let my kids go use them.
Uh-huh.
That was easy, and the kids brought them back. I said, just use them for a little while and bring them back. We'll charge them back up. And I plugged them in my kitchen, just standing. I know exactly where I was standing, and I plugged them in, and they charged up, and I handed them back to my kids to go use again. And that moment was like, wait a minute. I didn't go anywhere. Like you didn't have to run to the store to get batteries or dig through a drawer or, go search for a battery to use. I didn't buy anything more and I didn't throw anything away. There was no packaging waste. There was no waste that came along with that experience. And that moment of validation, just standing there going, wow, every time that I use these batteries from here on out, I'm going to have that same validation was the moment. That was the light bulb moment for me. It was like standing with our first samples and just saying that experience is too amazing when you use a product and
Mm.
it gives you, multiple validation points of like, hey, you made a good decision. That is a kind of a special realization. And so that was the moment of, wait, we're going to actually have to start a company and do this because it's rare that you have those moments in product development. A lot of product development stuff is grind, 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 solve
Yeah.
a little problem, solve a little problem. And you might get to that moment of validation incrementally over the course of could be years until you're actually holding sample. In the first round on this, I was like, okay, we could do this. And we're field testing Gen 4 products. We've never stopped innovating and making things better and in a variety of different ways. But even at the earliest concept phase, it was like, okay, that is just too good. You can't ignore that feeling.
Wow. So what did that drive you to do then in
Oof.
that moment?
Yeah, we started planning to make sure we weren't crazy. So getting into the business side of things a little bit, the if you want to build a consumer products company, there's some pretty well-known guardrails in terms of what you're going to need for gross margin, depending on your channels, your fully kind of channel mixed
Yeah.
uh, gross margin at the end of the year needs to be inside of these guardrails, or you're not going to have any money for marketing. And you kind of know what the business model looks like. We backed into a business model right after that. Said, is this going what's this going to look like from a product cost perspective for a consumer? What's MSRP going to be on a pack of AA batteries?
Yeah.
And we knew we'd have tailwinds over the years that would benefit gross margin. So we knew we would be going in the right direction because lithium ion chemistry is getting cheaper. It's an automatable manufacturing process. There's a bunch of tailwinds to the business that we knew we could get better on that front, but we knew we needed to start somewhere reasonable. And so what we did was just built out the business model and said, okay, this is going to be a $30 pack of AA batteries. What does that feel like for consumers? Because the ROI is going to be 6 or 7 charges before you get your money back compared to, a Duracell or Energizer battery.
Yeah.
So we felt like that felt kind of reasonable, but it's, at the time, 3 times as expensive as nickel metal hydride batteries.
Yeah.
You're buying the charger, and ours, the charger comes in, the charger's built in the
It's
battery, so
in
you
the
don't have this
battery.
extra
Yeah.
cost of the charger itself. So we knew what we kind of knew the business model, we knew the MSRP target, and then we said we need to check that we're not crazy before we invest years and a lot of money into doing this. And so we went out and did a Kickstarter and just made sure that we heard from the market, and not just friends and family who were obviously going to root for us. So we went out and did a Kickstarter, and that was the next validation point.
So that was less about raising money than it was about like testing testing the
Yeah.
waters.
I
Okay.
mean, it's always possible that you're just crazy, or have deluded yourself just to
Uh-huh.
convince yourself that something that sounds great might be great. If your idea, you're married to it. And so you have to validate your your beliefs and your emotions sometimes with the broader market, and just make sure.
Yeah. So, I want to come back to this moment as you're launching, but I have a question. So you mentioned earlier something like 10,000 tons a day of batteries going into landfills. Seems like a big number, but when you look globally, like that's really kind of a drop in the bucket in terms of what we throw away. Why, why care so much about battery waste?
Yeah, so it's about, just to check that number, it's about 10,000 pounds an hour. So
10,000 pounds an hour.
yeah,
Okay.
so that's domestically, just in the US. So anytime I give a US number, it's the global market's about 4 or 5 times as large. And so yeah, you're talking 40, 50,000 pounds per hour around the world.
Wow.
Multiply that by 24, and you get to some crazy numbers on a daily basis. Then you go weekly, and then you go, oh my God, this is the numbers. When you start looking annually, you just can't even conceive of 1 million tons. Is not something that you ever bump into. That's a lot. It's a lot of batteries. About 5% of alkaline batteries get recycled. So most of those are going into landfills or incinerators. So that's kind of the problem. If you could make an argument that if they were being recycled, and maybe you could make this argument about plastic water bottles or something, where you're like, well, or glass bottles, hey, they're going to get recycled. The resources are going to get reused. They're not going to be burned or buried.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that the energy it takes to recycle an alkaline battery, and this may be the same for plastic water bottles, I've heard, the energy that you have to put into the recycling is not as valuable as the materials that come out of it. So you can't sell them, which means you need to subsidize it. You can't sell them enough to offset your input costs, which
Okay.
means you need to subsidize that. And so right here in Park City, we have a nonprofit called Recycle Utah. They do all all of it. Anything that gets to them, they get off to recyclers, and in order to recycle the batteries, they have a volunteer. We're going to release a video in the next few days about this situation. There's a woman there named Ellen who has to sort all the batteries that come into this one little recycling center in this one little town. And the batteries have to get sorted. 9-volt batteries get a piece of tape on the terminal so they don't short. The coin cells get sandwiched between tapes. So you have to lay down a piece of tape, lay out the coin cells.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
she does 4 55-gallon drums every 3 months. So you're talking, 16 55-gallon drums a year. She's got a mask on, rubber gloves, and she's sorting batteries 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week on Thursday mornings, doing this in order that they will get recycled. And then
Wow.
you still have to subsidize the recycling. You still have to ship them off to this recycler. You still have to pay for that recycler to bring your barrels back, because it's better to bring them back than have them also recycle the steel drums. The whole process is just intensive, material intensive, labor intensive, cost intensive, and that is all to prevent them from ending up in an incinerator in those supply
Well, it's
chains if you're
clear
not
why there's only
subsidizing.
5% recycle rate, right? So,
Yeah, and you think
okay.
about, well, if we were getting 100% of the batteries out of Park City, you would need 20 more Ellens, or Ellen would have to work 80 hours a week just to sort the batteries, and that's unsustainable. I just think that that's totally crazy and unfortunate, and it's been going on for decades. And it just seems that if there's a better way, so for example, our batteries can be charged 1,000 times, and so instead of 4 hours, Ellen might be able to do her work, and what's 4 hours divided by 1,000, it's she might be able to do it in minutes. So the idea
Right.
for a consumer is, if you buy a pack of PaleBlue, you could replace 4,000 alkaline batteries if you were able to charge them 1,000 times. Charging them 1,000 times is more of a challenge, just in terms of like you got to charge them once a week for 20 years, or every day for 3 years.
But I'm
It's a
more likely to
lot of
lose them
charge
or
cycles.
accidentally throw them away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So our hope is that people reach 1,000 or more, but honestly, if you get hundreds of charges out, you've saved hundreds of alkaline batteries per battery, and that's a huge dent in that problem.
Wow. So yeah, the environmental impact and the issue with the current technology is huge, and a big part of your story. So so you've so you went out with the Kickstarter. What did you learn?
Oh, we learned we were onto something. We learned that it resonated. People got it intuitively. Like the challenge with introducing a new technology is whether people are going to understand it. Like how much education do you have to spend? And there's like these ideas in marketing around like, well, you got to touch someone 7 times in marketing in different locations before they understand your product and convert.
Mhm.
With our batteries, it's like you can hand them to anybody anywhere, and they go, "Oh, it's USB rechargeable. I know what that means." And then what it means is I can charge anywhere, anytime, and charge over and over and over again. That's just a new understanding that the world has over probably the last 5 or 10 years, where it's like if it's USB rechargeable, it's that simple. And so the intuitive nature of the product was probably the biggest takeaway from the Kickstarter. We were happy to hear that people were buying more than a pack of batteries from us in the Kickstarter. That really kind of average order value is important to the unit economics and the launching a brand in the digital direct to consumer kind of spaces. So that was a really important part of it. But I think the biggest part of it was like, oh, this is so intuitive that people get it automatically. And as you're marketing something that's easy to market, that's a huge benefit. And so that gave us kind of the confidence to launch the company into digital on January 1st of 2020, going right into COVID
Ooh,
with yeah, Amazon
interesting.
launch and the website launch on Jan 1st.
Okay, so you're got a website and you're launching an Amazon. What are like? So then, what are the next challenges? Right now, you got to scale. What else?
Scaling in digital was the goal, was to make a nice little foundation, build a little bit of a digital engine. But about 85% of batteries are sold in retail. So we had our eyes on the fact that consumers are buying in retail. We just didn't want to, you don't want to go into retail too early. So we spent a few years on the digital side. We landed some interesting conversations early on for international marketplaces. I think there's a lot more sustainable minded kind of cultures, and especially in Europe, and friends in the international sales space were like, we know some distributors that want to sell your batteries. So we actually landed in the earliest of days, maybe 15 or 16 international markets very early as well. So we had this digital business, and then the international business plugged right into that very quite nicely. And then, had our eyes on the retail space after that. And so the with so many batteries being purchased at retail, it's just makes a lot of sense to be going where consumers are used to purchasing batteries, and then figuring out
Mhm.
how to get their eyes on your product in what is a space that hasn't been really innovated on in decades. The battery space inside of a retailer kind of looks the same as it always has, which is a whole bunch of batteries, and you get your size and you check out the brands and prices, and you go on to get what other things you need in your life. But there's not a lot of consideration that happens in that space. It's just there.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that same kind of block in Home Depot or whatever, right? And kind
Yeah.
of by near the checkout, right?
A
Where
lot
you
of
grab.
hyperbole, what I call hyperbole marketing, a lot of like, you know,
Yeah,
ultimate and extreme, like all sorts of fun adjectives, trying to say like we're better without saying we're better than those guys. It's like these words
right.
that
Nothing's really changed, but yeah.
you could argue that things have gotten better, but it's incremental improvements over decades. 3% here, 4% there. I remember one time we were looking at like what is the sustainable kind of take by these battery companies. And there was this one, I won't name them by name, but there was this one company that was marketing the world's first battery made with recycled materials. Like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder how much recycled materials are in this battery. Is alkaline battery that was claiming to be green, and the packaging had a lot of green on it, and it had 4% recycled material content.
Wow.
And you're like, that's the sort of innovation that's been happening in the space, is like
Um,
little
so it was
tiny things
basically the
here and there.
cardboard on the thing.
I think there's some of the hard materials in the battery themselves, but
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, so you're in a space that's old and stale and hasn't moved in a long time. On the product side, on the retail side, it's just been what I what I call harvesting consumers' dollars. Basically, built this really nice business, and they're just year after year just kind of harvesting our hard-earned dollars to feed our consumer electronics products at home.
Well, I mean, you're hugely disruptive into that business. Like, what do you see as what's their response?
Yeah, we're disruptive, but we're a speck on the flea on the bump on the frog kind of thing, right? It's we're we've got a long way to go before we're yeah,
Or you're
eating
a
the
threat?
lunch. And so no response from the big guys, because they're just very optimized in their supply chains and distribution and very happy to be continuing their harvesting. So for us, I think we're not even on their radar, and if we are, it's you know
Mhm.
for them, signing one more multi-year contract with a retailer in any country is more important than bothering even having a meeting about us for now.
Okay.
I don't see that lasting very long. I think I think there will come a time when they have to reckon with the fact that the whole world is very likely to realize that single use is just can't be the way to do things, and that shift might happen rapidly, in which case they'll have to contend
Mhm.
with that. But eroding their own business by going after this is probably, I could imagine that not being a priority of any given leadership on any given particular day or week.
Okay. So kind of you're making progress, but you're still very much on the fringes, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're not going to make progress by going after those guys directly. We're just going to go after the consumers who have gotten tired
Yeah.
of that purchasing and use behavior.
Okay. So what have been some of the challenging moments for you as you've started to scale and you started to move forward with the business? What were some of the pivotal points?
Yeah, COVID was as challenging for us as it was for anybody. I think it was
Yeah.
good to start a digital business as COVID was happening. People were spending more time online. So I think that benefited us, but we had to contend with the supply chain and, what was once, a container shipping cost from Asia was a few $1,000s. All of a sudden, it's $20,000 a container to bring things over. Like the dynamics and the kind of macroeconomic
Yeah.
ramifications of the COVID years created challenges. We were doubling the business every year, and so we're out fundraising during COVID, virtually trying to build a network of investors that could help us fund the growth. At that point, at that point in any business, unless you're got lightning in a bottle, I think you're always burning a little bit more money than you're bringing in, because you're trying to grow as fast as you can. And so pre-COVID, the world, the venture capital and kind of capital markets world was be better for fundraising. People were funding all sorts of businesses rapidly with, the checkbooks were open from the investor world. And then COVID hit and
Mm.
things tightened up, and so you had to work a lot harder during those years to raise capital. And so we were always talking to investors in order to prepare inventory for the next quarter or the next half, and then try to stay ahead of the inventory needs, because hey, we want to achieve what we see as possible on the revenue side and
Yeah.
on the side. And so it's just balancing that through COVID with all the other stresses of COVID. Um, yeah, was certainly challenging. And we've always been a small, lean team, so just the dynamics there were fun.
What were some of the doubts as you're raising money and talking to investors? I mean, what you've laid out, I mean, it seems like a pretty compelling business case. What were the objections that people were raising when they said
Yeah,
no?
three primary objections. One is like, are people going to spend $30 on a pack of double A's?
Yeah.
Triple A's are 25. We get um, as the years have gone on, alkaline batteries keep getting more and more expensive. So the ROI for our double A now is more like 4 charges. Our CR123 is like 1.1 charges to get your money back, compared to buying single use CR123s. We look less crazy, I would say, on that front. The other two areas that we run into with investors has been, the question about, will the big battery guys ever take an interest in come in and just scoop up the market themselves? and I think we hit up on that one. The other one is,
Mm.
do you have enough patents to totally protect the space? And totally protecting a space where you've basically got a battery with some electronics and things is very hard. There's just even if you could patent it, then you're talking, are you willing to spend $1 to $3 million to litigate a
Defending it.
patent thing, right? Like that's not going to work. So what we've it's not going to work for us. um, the we have many patents, some registered, some pending. We've taken the approach of going fast, being the best market, having a premium product, and making sure our name is trademarked around the world. And so domains and trademarks are important to be able to have market access, and not bump into those challenges. But really, having a great brand and premium product offering is yeah, our approach to the market. Don't try to, if the ROI of your product is 4 charges, if you
Uh-huh.
drop the price $5 and lose all that margin for marketing, you might convert customers faster for $5 cheaper. But now what's the ROI is now, three
Mm.
recharges. If you're getting 1,000 uses and saving $1,000 per battery compared to, double A's at $1 each, if you can save 997 or $996, the consumer still gets the best ROI they've had from any consumer products purchase in the last decade, probably. So the ROI is too good, to not
Okay.
just say, hey, like, let's take the premium price and deliver on innovation and really push harder, where we can put that money to work to make better products for the future.
Okay. Okay. As you reflect back on that journey, right? What's the biggest misconception you had about starting and running this business? Something
Oh,
you wish you learned, wish you knew of.
um, I think the scalability of the direct to consumer model, iOS 14 came out, and Apple wouldn't allow tracking on their products unless you opted in. So Facebook used to be a really great place to market, and there's all these stories of people having 10 and 15x return on ad spend. Spend $1 and you make 10. And the algorithm knew everyone in a way that should make us all a little uncomfortable, but worked, right? You could say, hey, like, put these ads out if they're working with this demographic, target more people that look like that demographic. That algorithm kind of broke down with the iOS 14 update. And so the scalability, you go from these really efficient marketing spends to a struggle of always trying to figure out how to make the algorithm work for you, and doing a lot of that stuff blindfolded because the algorithm doesn't really work to your benefit as
Mm.
rapidly and easily and as effectively. And I think the other side of that is, the same thing happened on Amazon. And this is my take my take on it, and I don't have a long history in digital marketing, and someone might contend this, but I think the marketplaces where we try to build businesses, using Facebook and Instagram and Amazon and the like, are very good at knowing what your threshold of pain is. They
Uh-huh.
will suck as much margin out of your business as you are willing to. And so if you continue to spend on their platform for ads, they take that as a signal as you've got more money to spend, and they will turn your efficiency down and try to get as many dollars out of you, as opposed to helping you sell more units and making more
I
um,
see.
margin dollars. They're looking at, unit economics dollars and trying to get as many pennies, dimes, nickels out of each sale. And then that's just it just deflates your ability to really scale those spaces as effectively as you could 10 years ago. And so that was probably the biggest thing, because you're like, early days, you're like, oh, this works, put more money in, more people see the product, more conversion, it grows. And then you run into a wall and you have to refigure. And that running into that wall process is painful every time. And if that running into the wall thing is once a year, that's one thing. But if it's once every 2 months, you're like, this is like a not effective marketing channel. And we found really good returns in really random places that were offline. And you go, okay, well, let's not marry ourselves to spending too
Mm.
much of our time and effort there. And I just came back from San Antonio at the Ace Hardware trade show and talked to people all day, every day for 2.5 days. And to a single person, everyone is excited about us and putting us in their stores, and their customers love us. And it's just like, okay, there are other places that you can build a business now that are more human and more humane than pumping money into digital marketplaces and in trying to find some elusive unlock of 10x ROAS or
Yeah.
something. It's may not exist anymore unless unless you have lightning in a bottle. So
No, that's interesting. I was talking with somebody about digital marketing the other day, and they coined the term. They described it as sadvertising.
there you go. I don't remember that one.
That they were pouring money in and they had no idea where it was going or what was happening with it. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it must have felt good to go to a trade
it,
show and have real humans giving you feedback. Right?
it would be one thing if you could put money into those things and learn something. The problem is that the way they're set up now, it's like, well, the algorithm does the work. You just put as much content in there, as many different ads and stuff, and the algorithm will pick the one that works the best and optimize it for the segment and demographics and targets that it thinks is best. So you're just blindfold. You have no idea what's happening. It either works or doesn't, and then you don't know why, and you can't learn. And that's just coming
Mm,
from a product and manufacturing background where everything is like learn, apply that learning, remember that learning forever, and make sure that you preemptively apply that learning next time around. You're always learning and applying that, and that makes you better, faster, smarter. And the digital marketing space now is advertising is that's a fair take on it for sure.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's yeah. I've heard the frustration from a number of folks. So as you think back to the last 5 years, is there anything any piece of advice you'd give yourself 5 years ago that would make your journey easier?
Oh man, this is an easy one to say now. As we've been in and out of fundraise along the way, you end up there's more opportunities in this business than we ever knew were possible, from an innovation standpoint, like creating new attributes that will create new benefits for consumers this one, every day writes itself with the number of possible ways that we could take this business. And if I knew all of that before, instead of going out and raising convertible notes along the way, I would have gone out and said, like, we need to go raise a very large amount of capital and build this business larger, faster, and go
Mm,
after some of that innovation. And now we can only feed our R&D side as much as we can, raise money or peel off money from the rest of the business to do that. So we've got this amazing list of things we want to do, and we can only tackle 3 or 4 at a time. And so we're limited, and I think that's just more, we're eager to have people have those innovations and those products, and um, we could manage that sort of R&D funnel if we had a lot more resources, a lot more money. And I just think if I had that vision back then, I could have gone out and said, like, hey, let's go straight into a Series A and raise 10 or 20 million and like build a serious
so
uh,
go a little bit bigger,
team of
faster.
20 engineers. Give me 5 chemistry guys, give me 5 EEs, give me 5 industrial designers, and a couple packaging guys. Like, let's go big fast. And so we're building it organically along the way now. But
Hmm.
man, this would have been this had we known what we know now about what's possible from the innovation space, we could have gone much bigger, much faster.
Wow, interesting. So yeah, so thinking about then, I'd love to pivot a little bit into where you're going from here. So give us a bit of a grounding of where you're at today, like size of your company, number of folks you have. And you mentioned already that you're in Amazon digital and you're just starting to get into retail. Ground us a little bit in where we are, and then I'd love to talk about where you're going from here.
Yep. Well, there's 7 of us on the team. We've got quite a number of people, agencies and independent contractors on the outside. Fortunately, we've got amazing resources all around us, but there's the core team, full-time employees, there's 7 of us. So small but highly capable. We've been able to scoop up some real talent over the years, and we've sold a few million batteries, call it 3 million batteries to date. A notable number, if people use them 1,000 times, that's 3 billion alkaline batteries saved, but it's also $3 billion in consumers' pockets. If all of those were like a brand name battery, an alkaline battery at $1 a piece, call that $3 billion. If you do the math on the weight of 3 billion batteries, it's over 100 million pounds of waste saved. So even in the 5 years we've been at it, we theoretically could help people save billions of dollars and 100 million plus pounds in alkaline battery waste. And so that's kind of the key metrics that we look at, is like, are we having an impact? We are still doing well in digital, in 20 countries with a joint venture in Europe, and really looking to accelerate the European marketplace, as they have been pushing a number of initiatives there to be reducing waste. The USB-C cable initiative was a big one. The next one that passed last year is called the right to repair legislation. It's around e-waste, around batteries. And we've been pushing into retail for the last year and a half. And so we're probably close to 3,000 domestic retail doors now. True Value, Ace, Orbital do it best in the hardware space, hobby shops. We're in REI. We're going into
Okay.
grocery right now. We're going into college bookstores right now. So if we keep pushing into all those channels, there's probably 150,000 different domestic retail locations that sell batteries. Like, you can go anywhere and
That's
find
just
batteries for sale. It's everywhere from
wow.
gas stations to pharmacy to convenience, and of course all the big box guys and the consumer electronics retailers everywhere sells batteries. And the reason, here's the insight: the reason they all sell batteries is because people need batteries like now or soon, and so they buy them wherever they happen to be when that light goes off in their head. Go, we need some more batteries, or they run to the store, and whatever the closest store nearby, to get some batteries for their kid's toy or whatever. So batteries are sold everywhere,
They're
which gives us
everywhere. Yeah.
tons and tons of runway. And so we've got maybe 12 trade shows this spring. I was on the road all last week. I've got 2 more trade shows coming up next week and the week after. And other people on my team are going to other trade shows all at the same time. So
Uh-huh.
we're just kind of going after the retail side um, quickly
Okay.
right now.
So retail, I mean, retail, and then this Europe kind of legislative environment is favorable for your
For sure.
business.
Yeah, there's talk of what the next legislation will be, but there's probably some more down
Mm.
coming in Europe that will benefit our space. All sides of e-waste. You know, do I think throwing one alkaline battery in a landfill is problematic? I don't, but I think throwing, you know, a million tons into landfills around the world, it can't it can't be good. It can't be the chosen path for the world to say, like, let's keep doing that. So the question then becomes, like, what's the reasonable solution? And everyone would use rechargeable batteries if there was a good one, right? And there just never was. It's
Okay.
just so obvious to me that single use will go away, that it's just a matter of time. But in the meantime, it's about just trying to reduce that impact. And this month we're doing collection at all the schools here. It's our third year partnering up with the school district, and we collect
Mm.
batteries out of all the local schools and try to use that as a vehicle for education. So a lot of what we do, we didn't talk about this much, but as on the impact side, so we do this battery collection with the schools. We partnered up with Fish for Garbage to do lots of river cleanups. We work with Swanner Preserve here in Park City and sponsor their summer interns. We work with Recycle Utah here and sponsor the battery collection there. We work with
Mhm.
Wasatch Trails, and we've worked with a dozen more nonprofits that are working on, it's called environmental impact, for lack of a better term,
Okay.
or preservation of wild spaces and clean air and clean water. Those are the spaces that we're trying to have an impact, other than just preventing the batteries from going into landfills and incinerators. But it's
Yeah.
all from the same mentality. So my hope is, over the coming years, of just going into retail and growing the business is great, but also to continue to partner up with nonprofits, and have impact there. And so our vehicle for that is a membership with 1% for the Planet.
Yeah.
Also, we're also steward members with Call to Recycle, which manages, I think, 14,000 domestic retail locations for battery recycling. So I'll just plug this right now. If you have batteries at home, call the number 2recycle.org, put in your zip code or your address, and it'll show you on a map all the places nearby your house where you can go get rid of those batteries and get them into the proper recycling supply chain.
Good.
It's
Yeah. I was going to ask you that because I've got no use for these.
Yeah, they will get them to the right places. And
Oh,
there's you know there's a location nearby almost everybody that they're not aware of that will take those batteries and get them back to Call to Recycle. And it's
okay.
a
Cool.
really great organization that we work with. So anyways, the impact side is, I would like to talk about the sales side and the product side, of course, but the impact side of what we do is, I think, the energizing lifeblood of the company.
I'd like to do a little thought exercise with you if it's okay.
Sure.
You know, so if you think back to where you were 3 years ago, are you where you expected to be today versus what you were hoping for 3 years ago?
You know, 3 years ago, I'm trying to think if that was before iOS 14. I think that was before the iOS 14 update. At that time, we thought, okay, digital is going to take us to, 20, 30 million in sales on its own.
Yeah,
That didn't prove to be true. So the retail side, we knew it was coming. We knew we would be moving there. I would say so. I'd say on the sales side, the channel mix is different than we thought we would be
yeah,
doing at this point. The product side, I think, is totally different. We've come to realize that the BMS, we didn't talk about this much, but let me just give you a quick rundown. Just you don't remember all this stuff, but just for the impact of like what is all the electronics about, and then I'll kind of talk
okay,
about how we can leverage that. So every battery that we make has these features and more. So it's got the charge management. When you want to charge a lithium-ion battery, you want to charge it the right speed at the right time to maintain the longevity of the battery. So your phone charges faster at the beginning, slower at the end.
yeah,
Battery has the same sort of profile and it's tuned to the chemistry. It has short circuit protection, overcurrent protection, over discharge protection, so it doesn't go too low on the voltage side, overcharge protection, so you don't charge it too high, two thermal protection circuits, one on the PCBA, one on the cell. It's got reverse polarity protection. It's got, say, short circuit protection. It's got a very unique systems level engineering to protect it from puncture and crush, which are the things that would be concerning with a lithium ion battery. It's
that's where
got
you have fires.
multifunction LEDs in it that give us information about what's happening inside the battery and tell the consumer if it's charged or fully charged. It's got all of these different electronics features and functions on it to properly manage the battery, let's say.
Mhm.
Manage performance, reliability, safety, charging and discharging, all of that. Those electronics have become ever more interesting thanks to the advancements in microelectronics that can provide new attributes and benefits for consumers. And so we're just starting to unlock some of those. And I can
Mm,
allude to one. Uh, I mentioned one by name, and I can't tell you too much about it. And then I'll mention another that I'll allude to that's launching this summer.
okay,
So the DoD reached out to us, some guys in Army, many years ago, and said we want to work with you to build better batteries for the military. So we're 4 years into that project, 7, 8 months into actually being awarded the contract to develop this battery, and that's because we do something very unique. Every battery since the early 1800s, when they were invented, to us, was made as a chemical cell that delivers current through a voltage. Very simple concept. It's just a
okay,
chemical battery.
yeah,
We've got electronics on board. We can do different and important things. The other we're working with a partner on, and we'll launch this summer, that just is so far away from the military side of the business. The defense side, the other end of it is just this really cool space with people who care about performance, and we're able to unlock new performance attributes for that partner and for all of their customers, and they've never been taken care of properly by the other batteries that are out there just have been like one size fits all. Do with them what you will. If you're developing a product or you're a consumer, you put them in and they just give you current. That's
yeah,
very shallow thinking on what's possible with a battery and some electronics nowadays. And so we're ever more excited about the future of this space because we're unlocking all sorts of new benefits for consumers other than convenience and performance and save some money and waste.
okay. So it's not just a kind of a bucket of power that you're buying anymore. You're
Exactly.
you're able to do you're able to allow them to design electronics to do different things because of the battery management
Exactly.
technology.
Yeah, you could
Tell me
imagine.
how that's going to impact. Give me an example of how that might impact a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you care about. And so if you make up a in your mind some place where your batteries are used, and you say, well, what's the purpose of that product? Let's play with a simple one. Xbox controller is a big one that comes up. It's like, oh, Xbox controller, it's very smart. It's got a lot of smarts in it, but if you're playing Xbox, you want to make sure that it maybe runtime is what you're optimizing for. Say, okay, the battery should last as long as possible. What I call a dumb battery. A dumb battery just gives you, the circuit turns on and it gives as much current as the circuit allows in. And so that circuit can regulate and do things that could optimize for that as well. But if the battery could learn to be smarter based on the user or the environment, then the battery could start to optimize what it does to also adapt for optimizing for runtime.
Okay.
The controller gets set down, the battery has an accelerometer, and the battery says, "Oh, you're not playing right now. Let me throttle back. You don't need much power." The circuit gets smarter, and it says, "Okay, when it moves again, let's go back from this kind of dormant state to another state." And so you can optimize. I'm just making this up on the fly because this one is
Uh-huh.
not the normal examples that I give, which I'm kind of hesitant to give. But it says like I can optimize because I'm a smart battery, not a dumb battery, for whatever attribute this sort of use case might be needed for.
Okay.
I'm
So the
looking at the notes behind you,
battery's more capable of like handshake between the device that it's in and
or not, right? Either through a handshake or no handshake, just becoming smarter on its own.
okay.
So
Okay.
it can be a smart in the sense of learning and dynamic too, right? It's like
Wow.
yeah, you have to kind of break your concept. I try to explain to people like calling our products a battery is too limiting.
So it
It's not
sounds like
what the end.
that's another big piece of the future for you is how do you get people to rethink, right, what's possible with a battery,
Yep.
right? It's
Yep.
not just a bucket of power. So another thought experiment for you. So um, let's say I'm Santa Claus and I'm going to bring you $5 million check today to grow your business. Like, what are you going to what do you need to address? How are you going to use that
Yeah.
to maximize your impact?
You know, what investors would want us to do with it is to continue to build the engine in a way that becomes not only self-sustaining, but starts creating enough margin of its own to then fund the other fun things that I'd want to do. Part of me wants to fund those fun things first in order to accelerate the engine. So the sequencing of those two things is more of a conversation between me and an investor on
Mm,
which do they prefer, because both of them will be fun. It's like you've got something amazing, let's scale it, and then we'll use that scaling to then go fund IP and R&D and innovations and partnerships. Part of me is like, let's do the fun stuff, and we'll use that as a better platform to grow. And so one growth method uh, versus the other is with someone with a large check has to
so it's
be in the
almost a
conversation.
trade-off. Am I going to innovate first or scale first?
Yeah, it's like unlock these other things or just scale based on what we have now. And my inclination is that we've got something amazing right now. Scaling into that is probably the responsible thing to do. But the fun thing to do would be uh, do a little bit of both.
And what do you what if you can tell me what are your biggest challenges to scale?
Working capital's been the number one. We, people say this hardware is hard. What they don't mean is that it's hard to create hardware and hard to manufacture them. I don't think this is my career. We don't consider that part of it hard, but hardware is hard when it comes to growth because you have to fund inventory. And when you're growing, predicting your inventory needs and supply and demand planning, the challenges there create a real tax on working capital. And so you need lines of credit, you need different means by which you can fund that and ebb and flow with the demand when it spikes or when it doesn't come in. And that's probably the hardest part is managing through that. We've got a number of convertible notes, and the way convertible notes work is they sit as debt on your balance sheet and they will convert to equity, but now they're debt. And so you can't go to a bank and say, hey, with this balance sheet, I'd like to have an asset-based loan where I can borrow against my inventory and my AR. It's like you've got all this
You're
debt.
already loaded
Well,
up.
the debt's
Mhm.
convertible note, and only Silicon Valley Bank would understand that. Other banks they don't work in that zone. And so with Silicon, I should have mentioned that as one of the challenges that came along the way. We went out for a fundraise the day before Silicon Valley Bank crashed. Like that was the probably the most interesting time in the company's history because it was like, okay, we need to go to this fundraise. It's, put the finishing touches on this deck, and then like you go out, and then the next day, like the whole global news is Silicon Valley Bank has failed. And so that was a huge reset for us that year. It took us months to kind of recover our strategy, and for investors to kind of exhale and start coming back into the market and looking for investment opportunities. And so yeah, that was a challenge worth mentioning. So
Yeah. Wow. That's it's not the environment you want to dive into, is it?
it was a change of plans, let's say. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. So if everything goes the way you've planned it, like what does your business or your life look like in 5 years?
Yeah. So 5 years is there's this turning point that's coming. If you remember the incandescent light bulb to LED light bulb shift,
Yeah.
that happened so fast that the question then becomes, when does the ball start rolling downhill, or when does the
Mm.
rock start rolling downhill? And so the way I try to think about this is like a reasonable amount of growth, which is like, can you double or triple a product company like this every year? You can, if you have good investors behind you, and a really highly capable team. Doubling, tripling is well within reach. But when the rock starts rolling downhill, it's leveraging other resources that have larger operations to go into that hyper growth mode. So 5 years is kind of that zone where I think like hyper growth mode is possible, and lining up our joint venture in Europe and distribution partners and things like that, where we could prepare for, instead of 2x, 100% growth, prepare for hyper growth mode as the world shifts. If you hopefully everyone gets this. The innovation adoption curve, there's this point at which you cross the chasm, and you go from kind of the early adopters and innovators that adopt new technology to all of a sudden,
Mhm.
like, you're at Thanksgiving and your aunt is talking about it with your your uncle, and all of a sudden like everybody knows about this new thing that's happening. And it's like you cross that chasm and everyone knows about it, and then the ball rolls downhill really fast because it's like the obvious new solution. And why the heck were we ever using single-use batteries? Weren't they terrible? And I can't believe we did that for so long. And if that happens, and I think that's 5 years out, then hyper growth mode is 100%,
Wow.
if not
Yeah.
likely. Yeah.
Wow. It's kind of interesting. So you're kind of positioning it as it's a matter of when, not if.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's no way we're going to use single use batteries forever. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make so. The cost to charge our AA battery is a 20th of a penny. That's 20 charges to a penny. So that's to to use it 20 times costs you a penny, but if you were to buy 20 brand name alkaline batteries nowadays, it's 25 or $30. So compare a penny to 25 or $30 and tell me how that makes sense.
It's nearly infinite ROI.
Exactly. And so,
Yeah.
the future of this could be a battery that could go 5,000 or 10,000 charges and could charge in 5 or 10 minutes instead of an hour or two, right? It's like it's
Mm.
only going to get better. So yeah, it is totally a matter of when. And the chemistry side, we don't we'll go if the world goes to sodium ion or solid state. We're agnostic to the chemistry side. We're doing all sorts of chemistry innovation now. But if Tesla moves to some new chemistry or technology that we're able to draft off, we're going to go there. So the concept is not going to lose steam because it's only going to get better. And then it's a
Mhm.
matter of like, once everybody knows and uses it and has that kind of light bulb moment that I had in my kitchen 5 years ago. Once you've had that, you're like, I'm not going back to single use batteries. It makes no sense.
Wow. So how over the last 5 years, how has your leadership, like as a CEO, had to change? And what do you see in the hypergrowth world? Right? What do you see um, the challenge being for you to make that move?
I probably I do a bit of PR and I do a bit of podcasting. Do all the fundraising for the company. I'm at sales meetings and trade shows, and involved in every detail of the business. I have to get myself out of that quite a bit. My hope would be to find capital partners that allow me to spend 11 months of my year doing the work of the business and not fundraising too often. And then I think I end up in PR mode. I think I end up having to be the guy that gets very comfortable with lapel mics and standing on stages and talking about the business as opposed to being in the business and having a great president run the business while I become the face of the business and become more eloquent about talking about how important this stuff is.
How putting yourself in those shoes, how would that feel?
I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 21 years old. Fortunately or unfortunately, I had uh, I'm looking at the mountains behind you. Had a snowboard accident that turned into a knee surgery that turned into a staph infection that turned into several months on my deathbed. And so
Whoa.
reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, where he says you got to get 2 years of sales experience and then coming kind of face to face with my maker for a while there, I ended up going back into sales for a couple of years, and that is what allowed me to get comfortable talking about things that if I know a subject and I'm passionate about it, and it's just super comfortable talking about it. And so give me a microphone but my natural state is I'm a total introvert. I want to go up the mountain behind you with two or three close friends and find our way down it, and then then go relax. I like outdoors and like taking my kids outdoors, and I like quiet places. That being said, getting that 2 years of sales experience for anyone who hasn't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, pretty important in this world. Gotta be able to communicate and work with other people, and so I'm more comfortable at this. I'm almost 50. I'm more comfortable at this stage to go tackle that sort of work, but
Yeah.
not my natural state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Challenge there. So, what would that, so achieving that ambition, if you're able to get there, like what would that mean to you personally?
Oh, so the reason we're doing this is simply to catalyze the shift. We want the business to be we'd like to be the brand that sets the bar very high from a quality and safety perspective. That's number one. If we have set the bar really high, there's some products for sale on Amazon that I have my eye on right now, and I'm like, I don't know, you guys. Commoditizing the space and not taking care of quality and safety is so would be bad in a bunch of different ways. Our goal is to make the best products that we can make and keep making them better at that, and to set the bar high, because if the world is going to shift, whoever sets the bar the highest is going to really determine the experience that millions and not billions of people have with this category of products. And so
Mm,
we want to catalyze the shift and make it happen sooner, but we want to set the bar really high. So whether it's uh, me or us or the team or whatever, it's going to happen. But our hope is that by kind of putting our foot down now and saying this is what, I reeled off all the BMS features and
yeah.
subset of them, taking really good care of the product at those levels. It's just super important to this space. If we're saying the world's going to use batteries forever, and it's probably going to use more batteries than ever,
Mm,
let's make them the best that we can make them quality wise, but also experience wise for consumers, and help
right.
enhance their life in a way
Don't
that,
want this, don't want the story to be luggage fires or,
or yeah, just like,
crazy things like that.
or
Right.
people walking away from the category, using it, saying like this was great, but didn't last very long, or
Mm,
it underperformed to my expectations. Like, no, we need to exceed expectations on all levels, and that's just kind of the mentality. So yeah, the hope is that we're the ones who get some credit for creating the category, which we have, and catalyzing the shift, which I think is already in motion, and but setting that bar from a quality perspective and customer support, customer service, lifetime warranty, like all this stuff. Like, we want customers to stick by this. Once you switch, don't go back to single use batteries.
mm,
There's no need to.
yeah.
So we
So
stand
I
by
guess,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, how would you want people to remember Tom Bishop, right?
Oh,
When you achieve all that?
Uh, it's not. I hope no one remembers me. If I could hit the erase button, just erase the internet, so that I want to. There's a future me, if I don't get too old too fast, that will springboard from this sort of work to regenerative farming. I think that's like the next passion for me. It's food and health. I've had a number of health issues over the years that it turns
Mm,
out the majority probably were related to food and diet. And I'm just a huge proponent of, if we're all going to contribute as much as we can contribute to ourselves and our partners and our families and our kids and our community. It comes from a foundation of health.
Mhm.
And those days when I was on my deathbed with staph infection or other this food issue that I'm alluding to, like having those days when you're like crawling out of bed to get things done, and it's only through pure mental strength that you can kind of push through the physical side. I just think we all need to have a real eye on eating healthy, and I think eating healthy means uh, clean eating and regenerative farming and taking
Mhm.
care of our land and water better and taking care of our bodies better. Because when you wake up ready to go and like you can achieve 2 or 3 times as much during that day than you ever thought possible, it's a wonderful thing. And the only way to do it is from
Mhm.
a health perspective. So I spend
Yeah.
my I spend my non-battery hours thinking about my backyard chickens and my greenhouses and trying to figure out how to find a bigger piece of land to take it a little bit further.
Your backyard chickens are laying gold nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
They're
thanks for sharing that, your heart with me on that. And I think, health is that one thing that nobody thinks about until they don't have it.
yeah.
Right. And then the wake up call comes. So, wow, that's awesome. So, um, I'm thinking about that entrepreneur who's standing in his kitchen right now, right, with that great idea. What advice would you have for somebody who's on the beginning of their journey?
Yeah, man, I would never want to be responsible for somebody um betting their nest egg or their family's stability on doing what everyone knows is very hard, takes a lot of sacrifice, and the chances of success for any group of entrepreneurs is so hit or miss or so low. I don't know what the numbers are. Probably 3 to 5% of people are successful and that they have an exit and they're financially in a better position. If you have something that's so great that you're willing to do that, uh, find people around you that have done it and can be a good sounding board and resource yourself carefully in terms of who you bring in at the earliest of days, unless you're lucky enough to have large investment early. The earliest of days, you're going to have a small team. Make sure
Mm,
they're all like-minded, have strong alignment and values with what you're out to do, but also are problem solvers. Because I got my digital guy and my product guy going to Ace Hardware trade show, and like um, uh, I'm a bit of a multi-tool at this stage in my career, but like you need people that are willing and able to do whatever the business takes. And sometimes it's your digital marketing guy standing in a booth with you at a trade show talking to hardware store owners. It's having a really solid
mm,
early team. I think that the founder, CEO, or the leader, the number one guy in whatever organization sets the culture, but that culture is not concrete until you have number two. Then the second guy, if he's got the same values, now the culture's whoever number three is doesn't matter. The first two guys have made that concrete, and so your first hire better have the same sort of value and cultures, because that's set in stone now that you both are that
mm,
way, and everyone after that is going to follow your lead. So get that stuff right, but careful on risking everything because it's hard and it takes longer. I've heard I've seen so many people with amazing businesses stumble when Silicon Valley Bank happened or when COVID happened or
mm,
things, and lose a decade of their life and a lot of money and have to restart later in life when
mm.
they absolutely had products that the world loved and
External
more people needed
circumstances
should
killed.
something happen. So prepare and be
Mm,
careful. I've invested in every fundraise along the way. I'm fortunate to be able to put a little money in and contribute and demonstrate to my investors that we are in this to win it. And but there's you're risking, you're sacrificing every day, and then you're also putting a lot of risk. So
yeah.
validate, if you have to do a Kickstarter to validate, you have to like get out and validate your beliefs and make sure, do your business models and run the math and do a lot of spreadsheets to make sure that kind of know that the math works.
Mm. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, Tom. Thanks for joining me today on Untold. It's been a pleasure hearing about your story, about where you've been, where you're going, and what you've learned. if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about your company, where should they go?
Yep. Our website is Pale, P-A-L-E, Blue, Earth, E-A-R-T-H. If you read Carl Sagan, you'll get the
Yeah.
PaleBlue reference there. Yeah, Pale Blue Earth is the best place. Our Instagram is pale_blue_earth. That's a great place to kind of see how the brand comes to life visually and to hear more about what we're doing on the impact side. But a website, and we're putting out more YouTube on our YouTube channel now, like more information, post-purchase consumer information, like product information, some brand stuff, and some of our impact work. So you'll be able to watch longer form videos on YouTube and the Instagram is all short form stuff, of course.
Okay. Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with me today, Tom.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's great chatting, man.
All right. Take care.
You too.